Warning: some viewers may find the following content disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. You know how Fox has a weird way of counting Simpsons episodes? They refuse to count a couple of them, making the amount of episodes inconsistent. The reasoning for this is a lost episode from Season 1. Finding details about this missing episode is difficult. No one who was working on the show at the time likes to talk about it. From what has been pieced together, the lost episode was written entirely by Matt Groening during production of the very first season. Matt started to act strangely. He was very quiet, seemed nervous and morbid. Mentioning this to anybody who was present results in them getting very angry and forbidding you to ever mention it to Matt. I first heard of it at an event where David Silverman was speaking. Somebody in the crowd asked about the episode and Silverman simply left the stage, ending the presentation hours earlier. The episode's production number was 7G06. The title was Dead Bart. The episode labelled 7G06, Moaning Lisa, was made later and given Dead Bart's production code to hide the latter's existence. In addition to getting angry, anyone asking who was on the show about this will cause them to do everything they can to stop you from directly communicating with Matt. At a fan event, I managed to follow him after he spoke to the crowd, and eventually had a chance to talk to him alone, and when he was leaving the building. He didn't seem upset that I had followed him, probably expected a typical encounter with an obsessive fan. When I mentioned the lost episode though, all colour drained from his face. He started trembling. When I asked him if he could tell me any details about it, he sounded like he was on the verge of tears. He grabbed a piece of paper, wrote something on it, handed it to me, and he begged me to never mention the episode again. The piece of paper had a website address on it. I would rather not say what it was, for reasons you'll see in a bit. I entered the address into my browser, and I came to a site that was completely black, except for a line of yellow text. Download link. I checked on it, and a file started downloading. Once the file was downloaded, my computer went crazy. It was the worst virus I had ever seen. System restore didn't work, the entire computer had to be rebooted. Before doing this, I copied the file onto a CD. I tried to open it on my now empty computer, and as I suspected, there was an episode of The Simpsons on it. The episode started off like every other episode, but it had very poor quality animation. If you've seen the original animation for Some Enchanted Evening, it was similar, but less stable. The first act was very normal, but the way the characters acted was a little off. Homer seemed angrier, Marge seemed depressed, Lisa seemed anxious, and Bart seemed to have a genuine anger and hatred for his parents. The episode was about the Simpsons going on a plane trip near the end of the first act. The plane was taking off, Bart was fooling around, as you'd expect. However, as the plane was about 50 feet off the ground, Bart broke a window on the plane and was sucked out. At the beginning of the series, Matt had an idea that the animation style of The Simpsons would represent life and death, turning things more realistic. This was used in this episode. The photo of Bart's corpse was barely recognisable. They took full advantage of not having it to move, and made an almost photorealistic drawing of his decaying body. Act 1 ended with a shot of Bart's corpse. When Act 2 started, Homer, Marge and Lisa were sitting at their table crying. The crying went on and on. It got more pained and sounded more realistic. Better acting than you would think possible. The animation started to decay even more as they continued crying, and you could hear murmuring in the background. The characters could barely be made out. They were stretching and blurring. They seemed like deformed shadows with random bright colours thrown onto them. There were faces in the window, flashing in and out so you never were sure what they looked like. The crying went on for all of Act 2. Act 3 opened with a title card saying 1 year had passed. Homer, Marge and Lisa were skeletally thin, and still sitting at the table. There was no sign of Maggie or the pets. They had decided to visit Bart's grave. Springfield was completely deserted. and as they walked to the cemetery, the houses slowly became more and more decrepit. They all looked abandoned. When they got to his grave, Bart's body was just lying in front of his tombstone, looking exactly like it did at the end of the Act of 1. The family began to cry again. Eventually they stopped, and just stared at Bart's body. The camera zoomed in on Homer's face. According to summaries, Homer tells a joke at this part, but it isn't audible in the first version I saw. You can't even tell what he's saying. The view zoomed out as the episode came to a close. Tombstones in the background had the names of every Simpsons guest star on them. Some that nobody had even heard of in 1989. Some of them that hadn't even been on the show yet. All of them had death dates on them. For guests who died since, like Michael Jackson and George Harrison, the dates would be when they would die. The credits were completely silent, and it seemed handwritten. The final image was the Simpsons family on their couch, like in the intros, but all drawn in the hyper-realistic, lifeless style of Bart's corpse. A thought occurred to me, after seeing the episode for the first time. You could try to use the tombstones to predict the deaths of all living Simpsons guest stars, but there's something odd about most of the ones who haven't died yet. All of their deaths are listed as the same dates. And that, my darks, was Dead Bart, a Simpsons Lost Episode creepypasta. My final thoughts and opinions on this story: I don't like it. I don't like it one bit. Fun fact, and this is going to sound very embarrassing, I was scared of this story as a kid. I was terrified of the picture that's commonly associated with Dead Bart. Like, you know, the picture of Homer with his brain exposed, him being all melty skin-like and whatever. But this story is completely ridiculous. I mean, Bart being killed out of a plane, hyper-realistic blood and guts, dead bodies and stuff. It's just completely ridiculous, honestly. But I guess it has some form of being realistic. Like with the grieving, which I'll be covering in the future, the Amazing World of Gumball story. I imagine that they might have done this as kind of a test, or, I don't know, something. That they make a stupid episode that they don't release. It's just annoying. Like, this guy, I know he has like all of his, probably has like some edition of virus software, but that just virus destroyed his entire computer and he had to reset it. It's stupid, honestly. The only defense I can muster up for this creepypasta is that it was one of the first. Like, this is a very classical. This, especially with Squidward's suicide, which I'll be covering, I don't know when, but not now, not anytime soon. But they started the trend of hyper-realistic stuff in Lost Episode creepypastas. If I had to give this story a final rating, I'd have to give it a 3 out of 10. The story is stupid, the pacing is pretty fast, like they could have told a lot more about what was going on. They could have maybe done some more behind the scenes stuff, maybe interview one of the people afterwards. It's just, I don't like this story. Honestly, a much better Lost Episode creepypasta, in my opinion, is The Grieving. Even though, yes, The Grieving also does have blood and guts, I feel like it's a little better than this. But anyways, everybody, that was the end of the review. This has been The Dark Author. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell so you can stay up to date with my latest videos, and share the video with the friends. I'm trying to get to my channel to 100 subscribers. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye, everybody.